plus his memory of Jared Orchin. And, this week, the king announced that he's leaving town. And there is an expression in the Talmud about when Jacob left Be'er Sheva, and Rashi says, the glory of the city has left. Now, in the secular world, leaders, stars like this, are role models. And everybody, that's why there is the big wall in downtown Cleveland, that they have this big picture of him with Nikes, I think with his shoes, and now they take this off and they replace it. But they are role models, and sometimes the role models are not necessarily living up to the morality that people are expecting to them to live up to. I'm not saying anything about them, I'm saying in general. The famous story about Aristo, that he was caught in not such an Aristo behavior. He was caught in a compromising situation.
Who is this then?
Aristo.
Aristotle, okay.
Aristotle. And they asked him, no. That he said, no, I'm not Aristotle. In Judaism, it's different. During the summer month, we study Pirkei Avot every Shabbos. Pirkei Avot is the ethics of our fathers. It's from the Talmud, but usually the Talmud speaks about more monetary laws, what kosher and not kosher. This is not laws, this is morality, ethics, and morals. What is ethical and what's moral to do. And it's called the ethics of our fathers. And one of the reasons it's called fathers, because this is the lessons for us and from this everything comes out. And we have the custom, there is 6 chapters. From Pesach until Rosh Hashanah, every Shabbat we study one chapter. That from Pesach until Shavuos we finish one cycle. Then during the summer it's another 3 cycles until Rosh Hashanah. Now, what's the ethics of our fathers? It goes like this. They go from a rabbi by rabbi. Shimon HaTzadik he says, and then it goes what the next rabbi says. And then Hillel and Shammai, what they say, and that's Shimon HaTzadik, and so on and on and on. Every rabbi, and a statement from his name. And then there is written, the next rabbis received the laws from the older rabbis, Shmaya and Avtalion received from the rabbis before them, and we say something in the name of Shmaya and something in the name of Avtalion. And the question is, why we need the names of the rabbis? The ethics, the morality, the lessons, right? What it's supposed to do. Let's say Hillel says, you have to love your fellow Jew. Right? Fine, that write it. But why you need to know that Hillel said it? Shammai says, do a little, speak a little and do a lot. Say it, but why we need to know that Shammai said it? Who cares who said it? As long as we have the lesson, that's good enough. The whole Talmud is full of quotes in the names of the rabbis. But in the other parts in the Talmud, I understand why it's written there. Because there is arguments, right? One opinion says this way, the other opinion says this way. That I need to know who said it, because the halacha goes, there is rules in the Jewish law, according to whom we are ruling the law. For example, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, the 2 schools of thought, Hillel and Shammai, that we need to know what the house of Hillel said or the school of Shammai said. Because the halacha, the law goes by Beit Hillel, therefore I need to know what he said and what they said. Or Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, I need to know who said what, because many times the halacha is like one of them, not like both of them. And there is many examples for it. For example, when Rabbi Akiva is arguing with another rabbi, the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. Therefore, I need to know what Rabbi Akiva said, what the other rabbi said. There is, for example, when it comes to the laws of Eruvin. Eruvin is make the thread that they do around and Shabbat to be able to carry stuff. That's written in every place that Rabbi Yehuda says the in Eruv, the halacha goes like him. Then we understand why we need to know the names of the rabbis. The question is about Pirkei Avot. In Ethics of Our Fathers, there is no arguments. There is no disagreements. Hillel and Shammai do not disagree. Just Hillel speaks about one point, Shammai speaks about another point. Then if they don't disagree, what's the point to mention the names? Just say, what's the topics are? Do this, don't do this, be nice, be kind, and so on and on and on. Who cares who said it? That's the question. And for sure the rabbis didn't look for their own fame to say it.
It's right in the Ethics of Our Fathers.
And the question is why we need to mention names in the Ethics of Our Fathers. That there is a technical answer and there is a deeper answer. The technical answer is the whole purpose of Ethics of Our Fathers is to show how the tradition was given over, the Torah was given over from generation to generation. Therefore, the Ethics of Our Fathers starts, the Torah, Moses received the Torah from Sinai. He gave it over to Joshua. But you go in general, from Joshua to the old elders, from the elders to the prophets, from the prophets to the people of Great Assembly, right? Mm-hmm. And then it starts to bring a whole list of rabbis. Really, who was the next rabbi? The people of Great Assembly gave it over. The Shimon HaTzadik was one of the last of the Great Assembly. And then goes after him the next rabbis, and so on and on. That's why we mentioned that the way to do it is not just mention names, or the Ethics of Our Fathers did it. What is the best way remembering it? Think about it, that the Mishnah, the Ethics of Our Fathers, was written in a time that nothing was written. It was taught by art. Then are you going to remember Shimon HaTzadik's name? And you remember what Shimon HaTzadik said, you remember his name. And then the next rabbi, and you remember him with what his message was. That's how it's an easy way to teach to the students for the future to remember the chain of tradition when every rabbi has a quote, has a message that he said. That's the technical reason, but there is a little deeper than that. In Judaism, before we want to know what was said, we want to know who said it. Because when a rabbi said something, he didn't just come up, he had a brilliant idea. Oh, I have something amazing to tell you. Hu haya omer means he said it, he lived it. It wasn't just he said it. He lived by what he said. When Hillel says, be from the disciples of Aaron, love peace and pursue peace, love the creatures and bring them closer to the Torah, he didn't just say it. He lived by it. The famous stories with the 3 converts who came to Hillel, and Hillel was kind enough to convert them. And then was a story about a person who made a bet with his friend that is going to get Hillel angry. And he tried so hard, but it didn't work. Hillel never got angry. And the other guy got angry, that he lost the money. That Hillel did not just said it, Hillel lived by it. The quotes that in the name of Hillel is not one of his teaching that he said. That was his mission statement. That was his life was behind it. He lived by it. That in Judaism, our heroes are moral heroes. They are not just, they are living by that. They are the people that we look up on them. They don't have to have big posters. They are the people that, and it's not only Hillel. For example, there is a story about Rabbi Hanina Sgan HaKohanim. Rabbi Hanina Sgan HaKohanim, Rabbi Hanina was a vice, he was the high priest, he was number 2. And he was called the number 2 of the Kohens. Why was he called number 2? Because he was always only number 2. Why was he always number 2? Because he lived during the time of the Second Temple. That the number 1, the high priest, they were appointed by the Romans. Who was appointed? Who had more connections, who had gave money. but they needed somebody who knows the laws, or knows how to do Yom Kippur in the temple. That Rabbi Hanina was the guy who used to run the show. The high priest was like the appointee from the elected appointee. But the guy who really runs the government, really runs the temple, was Rabbi Hanina. That forever he was number two. Now usually a number two should be very angry with the government. They're corrupted. I never made it to number one. He should be bitter. He should be resentful to the government, right? Because he's always number two. Because of the corrupted government, he can never become the high priest. Rabbi Hanina says, you know what he said? You should forever pray for the good, for the peace of the government, of the Malchut, of the kingdom, because if not, the fear of the government, people would swallow up each other. Who said that? Rabbi Hanina Sgan. What do I mean with that? He exemplified the idea. He was not an angry person. Even he suffered from the government, and he ended up to be one of the 10 martyrs, killed by the government. But when he says that, we say, what does this mean? When somebody tells you something to do, he said. But when a person is doing it and he's telling you to do it, it has a whole different taste. And the same thing we have Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, woe is to the people from the insult of the Torah. They don't respect enough the Torah. Because they are not occupying themselves with the Torah. What means they are not occupying themselves with the Torah? They don't make the Torah their business. They don't believe that the Torah is a message for everyone. They don't believe that the Torah can turn around the world. They learn Torah, but they don't believe in the Torah. When somebody has a business, he's occupying, that's his business, he's selling something. If you believe in your product, you go out and you sell it and you fight for it. Why Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said it? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was a man who used to see people who were sick, who had a certain sickness that was like typhus, that was contagious. Everybody was afraid to sit with him. He used to sit among them and teach them Torah. A person like this, he says, oh guys, you better be careful that you don't care to teach Torah to everyone. He's saying that, if you listen to him. That's why that's why Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, is every statement has a name behind it. Somebody stands behind the statement. He lived like this. He didn't just say something, I have something nice to tell you. And he went home and he continued with his life like he never heard it. Could be speakers, they speak about the importance of charity. And then they walk out and somebody is stretching out his hand, he passes by. He gave a speech, but it doesn't mean he's going to live by it. But the rabbis of the Talmud, of Pirkei Avot, they live by the statement, and because of this, they became the role models of the Jewish people forever. And every role model in Judaism, every giant, every somebody who is a hero, that everybody talks about them, are not people who are necessarily successful. They are people who live by the words that they say. They embody their statement. That's how they sell themselves, by their action, not by their behaving like this. And forever the Rebbe used to say, I mentioned it many times, that a teacher from school, my son is learning there in yeshiva, he asked the Rebbe, how should I implant the love of God and the fear of God into the heart of the student? And the Rebbe answered them one line, 2 words: being a living example.